we will bring forward a swift 3-month consultation on further measures to keep children safe online. This will include the option of banning social media for children under 16 and raising the digital age of consent to stop companies using children's data without their or their parents' consent. The consultation will include a range of other options too, such as whether there should be curfews overnight, breaks to stop excessive use or doom scrolling, how we ensure more rigorous enforcement of existing laws around age verification, and action to address concerns about the use of VPNs to get around important protections. I can confirm that we will also be developing evidence-based screen time guidance for parents of children aged 5 to 16. And while we have already been clear that mobile phones have no place in our schools, the government will take further action as part of our determination to safeguard children and support their well-being.
Good day, political aficionados and connoisseurs of the utterly chaotic. Welcome back to the British Report, where we dissect the headlines with the precision of a surgeon and the glee of a child let loose in a sweet shop. Now hold on to your hats, because we have just witnessed a political car crash so spectacular it makes a multi-car pile-up on the M25 look like a minor fender bender. Sir Keir Starmer, a man who usually carries the emotional range of a very stern filing cabinet, has absolutely lost his cool. And why? Because the House of Lords just handed him a defeat so heavy, so humiliating, and so utterly public it has left number 10 smelling like burnt toast. We are talking about the great social media showdown of 2026, where the adults in the room were just told by the elderly in the chamber that they are moving too slowly. If you thought the Iron Chancellor was tough, wait until you see the Iron Peers smashing through the government's agenda like a wrecking ball in a library. Quick favour, if you are loving this, hit that subscribe button. Over 92% of viewers haven't yet. It is free. Takes a second and means the world to us. Thanks, if you did. Now back to the show. Right then, let us set the scene. Late last night, while most of us were tucking into a midnight snack or wondering if we should have watched that third episode of a Netflix documentary, the House of Lords was busy setting fire to Keir Starmer's carefully curated legislative plans. The issue at hand, a proposed social media ban for under 16s. Now you would think this is a bit of a no-brainer, right? Everyone agrees that teenagers spending 8 hours a day doom scrolling through a digital wasteland of filters and get-rich-quick schemes is probably not ideal for the national psyche. But instead of decisive action, the government decided to do what this Labour administration does best. They launched a consultation, a short, sharp 3-month chat to see if maybe, possibly, we should do something. Well, the Lords looked at that plan, had a collective "is that it?" moment, and then voted to force the government's hand. The numbers were brutal. 261 votes to 150, a majority of 111. In parliamentary terms, that is not just a defeat, that is a total routing. It is the political equivalent of Starmer turning up to a gunfight with a wet noodle and wondering why everyone is laughing. But before we dive into the fallout of this humiliation, let us look at the man who actually pulled the trigger on this legislative ambush. Enter Lord Nash, the Conservative former schools minister, and a man who clearly has zero patience for kicking the can down the road. Lord Nash did not just propose an amendment, he delivered a scathing indictment of the government's dither and delay. He argued that the 3-month consultation announced by Technology Secretary Liz Kendall was unnecessary, misconceived, and a transparent attempt to dodge a difficult decision. And let us be honest, he has a point. It is like seeing a house on fire and deciding that instead of calling the fire brigade, you should first conduct a survey to see if the neighbours prefer water or foam. Nash pointed out the sheer scale of the crisis, teenagers spending 5, 6, 7 hours a day on these platforms. He argued that we are way past the point of wondering if social media causes harm. The evidence is a mountain, and it is currently collapsing on our children's mental health, cognitive ability, and even their economic productivity. The suspense in the chamber was palpable as Nash laid it out. This is going to happen. The only question is when. By winning this vote, the Lords have effectively bypassed the government's wait-and-see approach and sent a direct order to the House of Commons. Now, Keir Starmer has to face the music. He has to decide whether to accept this ban or use his massive majority to crush it. A move that would look suspiciously like he is siding with Silicon Valley over British parents. It is a classic trap scenario. If he accepts it, he admits the Lords were right and he was wrong. If he rejects it, he looks like a man who cares more about his legislative timetable than the catastrophic harm being inflicted on a generation. Talk about being stuck between a rock and a very, very hard place.
One thing that's, of course, been happening a lot since we last spoke is the focus on under-16s and social media. Yesterday, the House of Lords voted in favour of the idea of banning under-16s.
This is going to be one of the big stories this year, I think, for social media. So the Lords have voted for this amendment to the schools bill as a way of sort of speeding up this process, but the government says that they're going to try and vote it down when it comes to the Commons, because they've launched their own consultation and they want to do it in their own way. The problem is that a lot of Labour MPs actually support this idea of doing an under-16s ban, so I think there's going to be a lot of contention.
If you thought Lord Nash was spicy, wait until you hear how the government tried to defend their do-nothing-slowly approach. It was like watching a magician try to pull a rabbit out of a hat, only to realise the rabbit had already escaped and was currently eating his homework. Responding for the government was Baroness Smith of Malvern, and bless her, she tried. She assured the House that the government hears those concerns and is prepared to act. It is the classic political rest assured speech, the verbal equivalent of a pat on the head and a lollipop. She argued that because there is a range of different views on how to implement a ban, a consultation is the right and responsible way forward. But here is the kicker: while the government is busy consulting, other countries are actually doing. Australia has already passed their ban. It is live. It is working. They did not spend 3 months asking people if they thought water was wet. They just turned on the taps. The government's argument felt flimsy, like a pop-up tent in a gale. They are worried about pushing harms underground or cutting children off from the benefits of social media. But as many peers pointed out, those benefits are increasingly hard to find in a sea of addictive algorithms and unchecked content. It is a bit like saying we should not ban cigarettes for kids because they might miss out on the social benefits of the smoking shed. The logic just does not hold up under the cold light of day, and the Lords knew it. They saw through the fluff and voted for reality. This defeat has shattered the illusion that Starmer has total control over the legislative process. The Lords have reminded him that they are not just there for the fancy robes and the subsidised tea. They are there to hold the government's feet to the fire. And right now, Starmer's toes are looking a bit singed. The sheer scale of the defeat, a majority of a 111, is what really twists the knife. It is not just a few disgruntled Tories, it is a cross-party consensus that the government's feet are made of clay. In the Grand Theatre of Westminster, the Lords are often dismissed as a historical curiosity, but last night they were the lead actors, and Starmer was relegated to a walk-on role with no lines and a very red face. When the news reached the Commons, the atmosphere was electric. You could almost hear the collective intake of breath from the Labour backbenches. They know that defending a consultation against a ban to save the children is a losing battle on the doorstep. It is the kind of political optics that keeps spin doctors awake at night, frantically searching for a way to make inaction sound like considered leadership. Spoiler alert, it is not working. But wait, there is more. Because wherever there is a Labour humiliation, you can bet your bottom dollar that Kemi Badenoch is standing nearby with a very large "I told you so" sign and a celebratory tweet. Kemi Badenoch, the Tory leader who has been pushing for this ban with the intensity of a heat-seeking missile, was quick to claim victory. She described the vote as a huge win and a victory for common sense. And she did not stop there. She went straight for the jugular, asking, "Another U-turn, Keir?" It is a punchy one-liner that cuts through the noise. She is framing this not as a technical legislative disagreement, but as a fundamental character flaw in the Prime Minister. To Badenoch, Starmer is the king of dither and delay, a man who cannot make a decision unless it has been focus grouped into oblivion. She is positioning the Conservatives as the party of action, protecting parents and fixing the flaws in the Online Safety Act that Labour seems content to ignore. This is a masterclass in political opportunism, and it is working. By backing the ban, the Tories have managed to get on the right side of a massive public consensus. Remember, YouGov found that 74% of Britons support this move. Starmer is left looking like he is out of touch with the very people he claims to represent. It is a total role reversal. Usually, it is the government that gets to play the Protect the Children card. Now the opposition has snatched that card, run off with it, and is currently using it to beat the government over the head. The ping-pong process between the Commons and the Lords is going to be a bloodbath. MPs will now be forced to vote on this, and with over 60 Labour MPs already on record supporting a ban, Starmer is facing a backbench rebellion that could make his lost call on live television look like a minor grumble. The irony, of course, is that Starmer built his entire reputation on being the forensic lawyer who follows the evidence. Well, the evidence is in, and it is shouting from the rooftops. When Lord Nash pointed out that the time for correlation versus causation debates is over, he was essentially calling Starmer's bluff. You cannot claim to be the party of evidence-based policy while ignoring a mountain of evidence that is visible from space. This isn't just a policy failure, it is a brand failure. For a Prime Minister who is constantly trying to project an image of steady, competent leadership, being outmaneuvered by the House of Lords on a common-sense issue is about as embarrassing as it gets. It is like being a grandmaster at chess and getting checkmated by a toddler playing with the shiny pieces. Now let us look at the Technology Secretary herself, Liz Kendall. She is supposed to be the architect of our digital future, yet she is currently looking like she is trying to program a VCR with a hammer. Liz Kendall's 3-month consultation was supposed to be a clever bit of political management. It was designed to buy time, to wait for the right moment, and to avoid any immediate conflict with the tech giants who provide so much of our digital infrastructure. But in the fast-paced world of 2026, 3 months is an eternity. By the time that consultation is over, thousands more children will have been exposed to harmful content, and hundreds more schools will have had to deal with the fallout of social media-fueled bullying and distraction. The Lords have essentially told Kendall that her careful approach is actually just a sophisticated way of doing nothing. It is a devastating critique of her department's performance.
Well, it's actually hard to understand exactly what's been agreed. It looks like everyone's taking a breath. I think the good news for our country is that he is not putting those tariffs on. Those would have been a disaster. I speak to businesses all over the country, the bigger ones in particular that export to the US, saying they're losing business, and US payers are having, US customers are having to pay loads more to buy our products. That's not good for the UK or the United States.
Imagine the scenes in the Department for Science, Innovation and Technology this morning. Panic, frantic briefing notes, and probably a few sharp words exchanged over the coffee machine. They were caught completely off guard. They expected a bit of a grumble from the Lords, maybe a few amendments they could easily bat away. They did not expect a full-scale insurrection backed by a majority of 111. It shows a fundamental lack of political intelligence gathering. They did not know their own chamber, and they certainly did not understand the depth of feeling on this issue. It is a classic case of Whitehall groupthink meeting the reality of the British public's concerns. And let us talk about the ping-pong process. For those who aren't parliamentary nerds, ping-pong is the term used when the two houses of Parliament cannot agree on the wording of a bill. They bat it back and forth until someone gives in. Usually, it is the Lords who give in, as the Commons is the elected chamber. But this time is different. The Lords have the public on their side. They have the evidence on their side. And they have a growing number of Labour MPs who are terrified of going back to their constituencies and explaining why they voted against a ban on social media for children. Starmer is heading into a ping-pong match where his opponent has a high-powered racket and he is playing with a wooden spoon. What about the experts the government keeps talking about? Are they really as divided as Baroness Smith suggests? Or is the government just listening to the loudest voices in the Silicon Valley lobby? The government claims there is a range of views, but when you look at the major charities, the educational experts and the mental health professionals, the consensus is remarkably clear. They are calling for action, and they are calling for it now. The different views the government refers to are often those of the social media companies themselves, who, surprise, surprise, are not particularly keen on losing a significant portion of their user base. It is a classic case of the government being too close to the industry it is supposed to be regulating. They are worried about the impact on innovation and the digital economy, while parents are worried about the impact on their children's brains. Lord Nash was right to point out that every day we wait, more damage is done. This is not a theoretical debate about the merits of the internet. It is a practical debate about the safety of our children. The government's attempt to get this right is starting to look like an excuse for not getting it done at all. It is the perfect being the enemy of the good on a national scale. By insisting on a flawless 100% agreed upon solution, they are allowing the current flawed and dangerous situation to continue unchecked. It is a failure of leadership, plain and simple. And let us not forget the role of the Online Safety Act. It was supposed to be the world-leading piece of legislation that fixed all these problems, but as Kemi Badenoch pointed out, it is riddled with flaws and loopholes that the tech giants are currently driving a digital truck through. Instead of fixing those flaws, the government is launching consultations. It is like having a leaky boat and deciding that instead of plugging the hole, you should first conduct a 3-month study into the chemical composition of the water. By the time the study is finished, the boat will be at the bottom of the ocean. The Lords have effectively grabbed the plug and told the government to start hammering. So, as the dust settles on this night of humiliation, what does it tell us about the state of Keir Starmer's premiership? Is the honeymoon over, or did it never really start? This defeat is a symptom of a much larger problem for Starmer, the perception that he is a leader who reacts to events rather than shaping them. Whether it is the budget, the NHS, or social media, the narrative is the same. Labour is moving slowly, cautiously, and often too late. They are so afraid of making a mistake that they are failing to make a difference. The adults in the room are finding out that the room is actually a lot more chaotic and demanding than they thought. They cannot just sit in meetings and wait for a consensus to emerge. They have to lead. The Lords' vote is a shot across the bows for number 10. It tells them that their majority in the Commons does not make them invincible. There are other centres of power in the British Constitution, and those centres are starting to push back. If Starmer continues to lose it every time he is challenged, he is going to have a very long and very difficult few years ahead of him. Humiliation is a powerful political weapon, and last night the Lords used it with devastating effect. The question is, has Starmer learned his lesson, or will he continue to dither while the lambs, to borrow a phrase from Gordon Ramsay, are led to the digital slaughter? The suspense is killing us, and the political drama is only getting started. Will we see a dramatic U-turn in the Commons? Will Starmer find his voice and defend his consultation? Or will he quietly fold and hope everyone forgets this night of shame? One thing is for certain, Kemi Badenoch won't let him forget. The British public won't let him forget. And we, at the British Report, certainly won't let him forget. It is a high-speed, high-stakes game of political survival, and the clock is ticking. Thank you for watching.